Welcome back to AllStarBuzz. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow. Now, let's begin. JD Vance just destroyed the mainstream media in a few short words at the end of this fantastic open Trump cabinet meeting. Let's dive in.
Of all the deals that you've done in your life, all the people you've sat across from and negotiated with, is President Putin distinct in any way?
He's a very smart guy. He's a very cunning person, but I've dealt with some people I've dealt with some really bad people. But I will tell you, as far as this is concerned, you have to understand, he had no intention, in my opinion, of settling this war. I think he wanted the whole thing. When I got elected, we spoke, and I think we're going to have a deal. I can't guarantee that. You know, a deal is a deal. Lots of crazy things happen in deals, right? But I think we're going to have a deal. If I didn't get elected, I believe he would have just continued to go through Ukraine, and over a period of time, a lot of people would have been killed, would have lasted for a period of time. And the reason that Ukraine, and I have great respect for the Ukraine as fighters, they have great fighters, but without our equipment, that war would have been over, like people said, in a very short period of time.
Is there a time
If you remember, I gave the javelins, and the javelins are the things that knocked out those tanks right at the beginning of the war. They said that Obama, at the time, gave sheets, and Trump gave javelins. Well, I was the one that did that, but I want to see it come to an end.
Will he have to make concessions, President Putin?
Yeah, he will. He's going to have to. And I believe that because we got elected, that war will come to an end. And I also believe if we didn't get elected, if this administration didn't win the election by a lot, that war would go on for a long time, and he would want to take the whole thing.
What concessions?
The big question I had is, does he want to take the whole thing? But the reason, and the Ukrainians are good fighters, I have to say, but without the equipment, without our equipment, we have the best equipment in the world. We have the best military equipment in the world. Without our equipment, that would have been over very quickly.
What concessions would you like to see? What concessions would you like to see?
Oh, I don't want to tell it right now, but I can tell you that NATO you can forget about. I think that's probably the reason the whole thing started. And I think, JD, we can say that. What, do you have a statement on that? You've been very much involved. I gave him the beauty.
Concessions from Russia.
I mean, look, as the president said, we're not going to do the negotiation in public with the American media. He's going to do it in private with the president of Russia, with the president of Ukraine, and with other leaders. And I think that's how this has to go. I think that I just want to push back against some of the criticism I've seen of the administration on this, because every single time the president engages in diplomacy, you guys preemptively accuse him of conceding to Russia. He hasn't conceded anything to anyone. He's doing the job of a diplomat, and he is, of course, the diplomat-in-chief as the president.
I
of the
love
United
this
States.
tag team, Donald Trump and JD Vance. Normally, Trump doesn't give the floor to his vice president. I don't remember him ever doing that with Mike Pence. But JD Vance? He's a whole different story. He's sharp, well-educated, and has a razor-sharp wit. He's been in combat situations, grew up with a recovering drug addict mother, and came from nothing. Now, he's the Vice President of the United States and the likely frontrunner for 2028. This is exactly why Donald Trump tapped him for the role. It's not because JD Vance was a never-Trumper, it's because he came around and realized, oh, after one term of Trump, we were completely wrong. He's part of that group that once doubted Trump but had a revelation when they saw how the media was lying to us en masse. That's what makes JD Vance such a huge asset. And this little dunk on the media? It's 100% spot on. The mainstream media will do anything, especially against Republicans, take potshots at the president. Why? Because those headlines sell. It's an unfortunate truth about human nature, but it's also the truth about modern journalism. Most of it is just yellow, muckraking garbage designed to push negative stories. And it's only getting worse as it feeds the algorithm. We were lucky for a little while after World War II when the media started coming to its senses and realized, oh, it's either prop up the United States or fight for the communists. They chose the United States for about 20 years anyway. Then Walter Cronkite got on his show and lied about the Tet Offensive. By the way, we won the Tet Offensive. It was shocking, but we won decisively. The whole plan behind it was to make American journalists finally put down their pens and say, hey, things are terrible over here, even though we were completing our objectives. So yeah, we can always trust the mainstream media to be the mainstream media. That's classic. Of course, JD Vance is going to dunk on these peep, and rightly so. But Donald Trump was also dropping truth bombs left and right. And if you notice who's sitting over there, it's Marco Rubio and Doug Burgum. Burgum has a huge Ukrainian population in North Dakota because, well, it's flat, has almost the same climate and the same soil. So, of course, Ukrainians migrated all the way over there. He's taking a specific interest in this because the same people living there are also around the new shale oil fields. Then you've got Marco Rubio, Trump's Secretary of State, trying to make sure Trump doesn't say anything too controversial so he doesn't have to do damage control later. Again, that's just politics in action. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. But speaking of politics in action, here's an ABC story from back in 2019. The Trump administration approved $39 million in sales of defensive lethal weapons to Ukraine, according to 2 U.S. officials and another source. Familiar with the plan, the report goes on to say the new package will include Javelin anti-tank weapons, with one U.S. official confirming it includes 150 missiles and 2 launchers. Okay, that's pretty impressive. That's 150 missiles out there to protect Ukraine against a potential invasion. But why were they worried about a potential invasion back in 2019? Well, as it turns out, you can always trust Russia to be paranoid. They're always looking to take back the near abroad, and the biggest jewel in their crown is Ukraine. Fast forward to 2022. After Joe Biden stupidly pulls out of Afghanistan in the most disastrous way possible, ruining his credibility, from that point forward, Russia looked left, looked right, and realized, oh, we can use this. And they did. They launched a 3-pronged assault, one heading west, one coming from the south to cut off the Black Sea and its ports, and the most critical part, a northern attack through Belarus, straight at Kyiv, the capital. Those Javelin missiles, they were the best defense Ukraine had against the Russians at the time. And they worked. The plan stalled. The forces in the west didn't get as far as they wanted. The forces in the south were stopped in their tracks. And the forces in the north, they were so devastated they had to retreat after just a few weeks. Now, there's no northern front anymore. Let's take a step back and really break this down. The situation in Ukraine is a perfect example of how leadership, or the lack of it, can change the course of history. When Russia first started flexing its muscles in 2014, annexing Crimea and supporting separatists in eastern Ukraine, the world watched. But what did the Obama administration do? Nothing. They refused to provide Ukraine with the defensive weapons they desperately needed, fearing it would escalate tensions. Instead, they offered blankets and MREs. Seriously? Then came Donald Trump. He didn't just talk about supporting Ukraine, he acted. He approved the sale of Javelin anti-tank missiles, giving Ukraine the tools they needed to defend themselves. And it wasn't just about the weapons, it was about sending a message to Russia. The United States stands with its allies. That decision didn't just help Ukrainites, saved Ukraine. Fast forward to 2022. After Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, which left the world questioning America's resolve, Russia saw an opportunity. They thought they could roll into Ukraine, take Kyiv in a matter of days, and rewrite the map of Europe. But they were wrong. Thanks to those Javelin missiles and other support, Ukraine was able to hold the line. They stopped the Russian advance, defended their capital, and turned the tide of the war. And let's be clear, this isn't just about Ukraine. It's about the broader message it sends. When America leads with strength and decisiveness, it deters aggression. When America hesitates or shows weakness, it invites chaos. That's why Trump's decision to arm Ukraine was so critical. It wasn't just a military move, it was a strategic one. But here's the thing, the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about this. They don't want to give Trump credit for anything, even when it's undeniable. Instead, they focus on Biden's aid packages, as if throwing money at the problem after the fact is the same as taking decisive action to prevent it in the first place. It's not. And that's why JD Vance's comments are so important. He's calling out the media for their bias and their refusal to acknowledge the truth. He's reminding people that leadership matters sand, that Trump's leadership made a huge difference. This isn't just about Ukraine. It's about the kind of world we want to live in. Do we want a world where America stands strong, supports its allies, and deters aggression? Or do we want a world where America hesitates, shows weakness, and invites chaos? The choice is clear. And that's why it's so refreshing to see someone like JD Vance speaking truth to power. He's not afraid to call out the media, to challenge the narrative, and to remind people what real leadership looks like. It's a rare thing in politics these days, and it's exactly what we need. And now, even Belarus is looking left, looking right, and thinking, maybe, just maybe, supporting the Russians was a huge mistake. So here's the situation. Barack Obama could have given Ukraine weapons back in 2014, but he refused. He balked at the line and failed to act. But Donald Trump, he gave them exactly what they needed. And without those weapons, there wouldn't be a Ukraine anymore. Ukraine would be flying the Russian flag right now, because if Kyiv had been captured, that would have been it. The entire eastern portion of the country would have been gone. Russian forces would have linked up, pushed through the last pocket, moved south, taken the ports, and Ukraine would have been completely cut off. That's what would have happened. So let's be clear, Donald Trump literally saved Ukraine. And you can talk all day about how it was actually the money under Joe Biden that made the difference. But no effects didn't happen first. Why would have never happened afterward? It's that simple. But the mainstream media refuses to report on this because they don't want to give Donald Trump the credit he deserves. That's the sad reality. And that's why I love that JD Vance is out here dunking on the mainstream media. It's not something you usually see in a cabinet meeting, but JD Vance has that ability. He's got that sharp, razor-sharp wit that cuts through the nonsense and delivers a crushing blow to anyone who still thinks the mainstream media is unbiased, because we know it's not. But let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Catch you in the next one!